I said, get out! You people always have some sob story, don't you? Richard Caldwell stood in the doorway, blocking their path. Rain pounded the pavement behind the elderly couple. You think you can just squat here forever? This is my building. Mine! Worth $4 million. And you're dragging down the property value just by breathing in it. He snatched the lease papers from Eleanor Washington's hands, crumpled them, threw them at her feet. Mr. Caldwell, please. We've paid every month on time. We just need... Need! He wiped his hands on his pants like he'd touched something filthy. I don't care what you need. I have investors. Real people with real money waiting for this property. Not welfare cases pretending to be tenants. Neighbors watched from their windows. No one moved. Eleanor bent down slowly to pick up the crumpled papers. Her hands shook. Have you ever watched someone abuse their power, thinking they're untouchable? Thinking no one can stop them? Richard Caldwell made that mistake. He had no idea who their son was. And when he found out, his entire world collapsed in seconds. 6:30 in the morning. Eleanor Washington stood on her small balcony, watering the geraniums. Steam rose from her coffee cup into the cold air. Below, the street sweeper hummed past on Riverside Avenue. She wore a simple blue cardigan over her nightgown. No jewelry except the gold cross her mother gave her 40 years ago. It caught the early light. "Morning, Dr. Washington," Mrs. Carter called from the balcony below. She was hanging laundry. "Good morning, dear. How's your grandson's cough?" "Much better. That remedy you suggested worked perfectly." Eleanor smiled. She'd been retired from pediatric surgery for 8 years now, but neighbors still came to her with questions. She never minded. Inside the apartment, James sat at the kitchen table, reading glasses perched on his nose. The Philadelphia Inquirer spread before him. He was doing the crossword puzzle in pen, never pencil. 43 years as a civil engineer taught him to be precise. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with yellow tiles from the 1970s. But it was theirs, or at least it felt like theirs. The walls held their history, wedding photos from 1980. James received the Urban Planning Excellence Award in 1998. Eleanor's medical school diploma. A framed newspaper clipping about the children's hospital wing she helped establish. And there, on the mantel, a photo of a young man in judicial robes, their son Thomas, graduation day from law school. Eleanor dusted that frame every morning. They'd moved here 8 years ago when James retired, left their bigger house in the suburbs. They wanted something simpler, somewhere they could walk to church, where neighbors knew each other's names. The building was beautiful, a 1920s brownstone with original crown molding and hardwood floors. 12 units total, a mix of young families, elderly couples, and students. The Rodriguez family in 4C, the Carter family below them. Old Mr. Patterson on the first floor who always forgot his keys. Every Sunday, Eleanor baked cookies, chocolate chip for the kids, oatmeal raisin for the adults. She'd knock on doors and hand them out in little paper bags. James helped her tie them with a ribbon. "We're blessed," she'd tell him. "We should share it." The neighborhood was changing, though. Everyone could see it. Luxury condos rising 2 blocks east, coffee shops replacing the corner bodega, rent prices climbing like ivy up a wall. Eleanor noticed the new people moving in. Young, white, wearing expensive workout clothes. They didn't smile much, didn't stop to chat. And Richard Caldwell noticed them, too. He'd inherited the building 5 years ago when his father died. 12 rental units generating steady income. But Richard wanted more. He always wanted more. He drove a black Mercedes S-Class, parked it right in front where everyone could see it. License plate read, Caldwell 1. He wore Rolex watches and Italian suits even for simple building inspections. "Just checking on my investment," he'd say. But his eyes calculated, assessed, measured everything in dollar signs. 3 months ago, a developer approached him, wanted to buy the entire building. Tear it down. Build luxury apartments. 20 units starting at $4,000 a month. The offer, $4.2 million. Cash. But only if the building was vacant. Richard did the math immediately. His current tenants paid an average of $1,200 a month, rent controlled, protected by old leases his father had signed. Getting rid of them legally would take years, but there were other ways. He started with the Rodriguez family last year. Renovation notice after renovation notice. Noise complaints. Inspection visits at odd hours. They left after 6 months. Took a small buyout just to escape the harassment. Now 3 units remained occupied by long-term tenants. The Patterson family, the Carters, and the Washingtons. Richard studied them carefully. Mr. Patterson was 92, wouldn't last long. The Carters had family in California. Maybe they could be persuaded to move. But the Washingtons, they were the problem. Strongest lease, longest tenure, perfect payment history, no legitimate reason to evict them. He watched them sometimes from his car. Eleanor watering her plants. James walking to the corner store for his newspaper. They smiled at everyone, helped carry groceries, held doors open. It made him sick. They were blocking his future, sitting on his fortune, and they didn't even realize it. Richard made a decision that day. He'd make them realize it. He'd make them so uncomfortable, so harassed, so desperate that they'd beg to leave. He just needed to be creative about it. And Richard Caldwell could be very creative when $4 million was on the line. What he didn't know was that the elderly couple he was targeting had their own connections, their own power, their own way of fighting back, and it would destroy him. 2 weeks earlier. October 23rd. The letter arrived in a cream-colored envelope, expensive paper, embossed letterhead. Eleanor opened it at the kitchen table while James poured morning coffee. Building modernization notice, she read aloud. All tenants requested to temporarily relocate for 60 days beginning November 1st. James set down his cup. Requested or required? Eleanor scanned the page. It says requested, and they're offering $2,000 for voluntary cooperation. The letter was signed by Richard Caldwell, property manager and owner. That afternoon he showed up at their door. Cologne is thick enough to taste. His suit probably cost more than their monthly rent. Did you receive my letter? He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. Yes, Mr. Caldwell. We appreciate the offer, but we'd prefer to stay during renovations. Our lease permits it under Section 7B. The smile vanished. His jaw tightened, just for a second. Then the smile returned, faker than before. Of course. Of course. I just thought you'd be more comfortable elsewhere. The noise will be significant. We'll manage. Thank you for thinking of us. He left without another word, but Eleanor noticed his hand, clenched into a fist, knuckles white. She wrote in her notebook that night. Date, time, details of the conversation. She'd kept journals her whole life. Patient notes, surgery logs. Now this. James watched her write. You think it'll get worse? I think a man who offers money usually expects to get what he pays for. She was right. Monday morning, 6:45 a.m. Hammering, loud enough to rattle the dishes. Eleanor jerked awake, heart pounding. James was already sitting up. What in God's name? The hammering came from the unit next door. Empty for 2 months since the Rodriguez family left. Bang, 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 rhythmic, relentless. James pulled on his robe and knocked on the superintendent's door. Mr. Kim answered, still in pajamas. I'm sorry, Mr. Washington. Mr. Caldwell called me at 6, said it was emergency repairs. Pipe burst or something. I had to let the crew in. At 6:45 in the morning? Mr. Kim looked at his feet. He said it couldn't wait. The hammering continued until 8 p.m. 14 hours. When it finally stopped, Eleanor's head throbbed. Her blood pressure medication sat untouched on the counter. She'd forgotten to take it. She wrote it down. Date, time, duration. Witness, building superintendent. Tuesday. The heat shut off. Outside temperature, 38 degrees. Eleanor wore 2 sweaters and her winter coat indoors. Her breath made small clouds. James called the superintendent. "Heat's out." "I know. Boiler issue. Should be fixed by tomorrow." It came back on at 11 p.m., just long enough for them to fall asleep, then shut off again at 3 a.m. Eleanor added it to her notebook. Wednesday. Another letter. Certified mail. Lease violation notice. Unauthorized occupant. Eleanor read it twice. 3 times. "They're claiming we're subletting to someone else." "That's insane. It's just us." She documented every visitor they'd had in the past month. Her sister on October 5th, James's brother on October 12th, their friend Margaret for Bible study on October 18th. 2 hours each visit. All documented. She took the list to Caldwell's office downtown, waited in the lobby for 40 minutes. When he finally saw her, he barely looked up from his phone. "Mr. Caldwell, there's been a mistake. This violation notice..." "Is there someone living with you who isn't on the lease?" "No. We have visitors occasionally, family, friends. Our lease permits guests." He glanced at her list, pushed it back across his desk with one finger. "I've received complaints from other tenants. Noise, disturbances." Eleanor's voice stayed calm, but her hands gripped her purse tighter. "May I see those complaints?" "That's confidential." "Then how can we address them?" He stood. Meeting over. "I suggest you reconsider my relocation offer. Things will only get more uncomfortable." She left. Went straight to Mrs. Carter's apartment. "Have we been loud, disturbing you?" Mrs. Carter's face crumpled with sympathy. "No, Dr. Washington, never. You're the quietest people in the building." "Did he say you were?" "He implied complaints were filed." "That's a lie." Mrs. Carter disappeared into her bedroom, came back with a piece of paper. "I'm writing a statement. Right now. You're perfect neighbors. I'm a witness." By Friday, Eleanor had written statements from 5 neighbors, all saying the same thing. The Washingtons were model tenants. No noise, no problems, no disturbances. Friday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eleanor and James returned from grocery shopping. 3 bags. Heavy. Milk, eggs, vegetables, chicken for Sunday dinner. A black Mercedes blocked the building entrance. Caldwell stood on the steps talking to 2 white men in expensive overcoats, developer types, sharp eyes and sharper smiles. All 3 turned when the Washingtons approached. One of the developers elbowed the other. They both grinned. Caldwell stepped down, blocking the door. Again. "We need to talk. Now." Eleanor shifted the grocery bag in her arms. The plastic handles cut into her palms. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell. Should we go inside?" "No need. This won't take long." He pulled papers from his briefcase, thrust them at James. 30-day eviction notice. Multiple lease violations. Failure to maintain property standards, disturbing other tenants. James took the papers, read carefully. "These violations are false. We have statements from our neighbors." "I don't care what you have." Caldwell's voice rose, loud enough for people walking by to hear. "This neighborhood is changing, upgrading. Properties like this need a certain type of tenant, a certain image." "What type is that?" Eleanor's voice stayed soft, but something flickered in her eyes. One of the developers laughed. "Come on, lady. Look around. You see any other people like you in the new condos going up?" The other developer nodded. "Just take the money. Go back where you came from. Everyone will be happier." Eleanor's grocery bag slipped. James caught it before it fell. Inside, the eggs shifted. One cracked. She could feel the wetness seeping through the carton. "Our lease renews automatically," James said. "Section 7B clearly states—" Caldwell snatched the papers back. "Your lease? This old piece of paper?" He grabbed their grocery bags, dumped the contents on the steps. Milk carton rolled, eggs cracked, vegetables scattered. "This is exactly the problem. You cook those smells, probably damaging the unit, bringing down everyone's quality of life." Eleanor watched an apple roll down the steps into the gutter. She'd picked that apple carefully, planned to bake a pie for the church bake sale. "Pick up your mess and listen carefully," Caldwell said. "You have 30 days. Take the buyout or I make this much, much worse. I have judges in my pocket, politicians, people who actually matter in this city." He pulled out his phone. "I can have the police here in 5 minutes. Trespassing, disturbing the peace, resisting a lawful eviction. Make one more problem and I'll bury you in legal fees until you're homeless." James bent down, started gathering the groceries. His hands shook. Eleanor had never seen his hands shake before. She knelt beside him, picked up the cracked eggs one by one. Yolk dripped between her fingers. She placed them gently in the carton anyway. Caldwell watched, smirking. Then he pulled out their lease renewal from his pocket, the one Eleanor had given him last week. He crumpled it slowly, taking his time, made sure they were watching, then threw it at Eleanor's feet. It landed in a puddle of milk. Paper doesn't mean anything without someone willing to enforce it. He wiped his hand on his pants. That same gesture, like touching their papers, contaminated him. "Sign my buyout agreement by Monday, or find out exactly how powerless you really are." The door slammed, locked. Eleanor heard the deadbolt slide into place. They stood on the steps in the cold. Groceries scattered. Neighbors watching from windows, but no one coming out. No one helped. James gathered what he could salvage. The milk was ruined. Most of the eggs were broken. The chicken package was torn. They walked to their car in silence, sat in the front seats. Engine off. Rain is starting to fall. "We need to call Thomas," Eleanor said quietly. "Not yet." James's voice was tight, angry. She rarely heard him angry. "Let's see how far he takes this. Document everything. Build the case." Eleanor pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app, typed, "November 8th, 6:47 p.m. Caldwell dumped groceries, crumpled lease, threatened legal action, made racial comments via associates." Her fingers moved slowly, carefully, getting every detail right. In medical school, they'd taught her, documentation saves lives. Record everything, symptoms, treatments, outcomes. She'd never imagined documenting her own persecution. But the principle remained. Record everything. Because eventually, someone would need to know the truth. Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Pounding on the door woke Eleanor. The building superintendent stood in the hallway, face apologetic. "Dr. Washington, I'm so sorry. Mr. Caldwell changed all the locks last night. Security upgrade," he said. "Here are your new keys." Eleanor looked past him. Every neighbor had new keys. Everyone had been notified, except them. They'd left for the early church at 5:30, returned to find themselves locked out of their own home. 45 minutes in the cold hallway. Mr. Kim's hands trembled as he gave them the keys. "He said if I warned you, I'd be fired." Eleanor wrote it down. Date, time, locked out, Saturday afternoon. They returned from Bible study at 4:30. The apartment door stood open, just slightly, unlocked, ajar. James pushed it wider. "Hello?" Silence. Inside, everything was wrong. The furniture moved. Drawers opened an inch. Closet doors hanging open. Eleanor's medical files spread across the dining table. Someone had photographed them. Phone prints visible in the dust. James's engineering awards knocked from shelves, face down on the floor. Her jewelry box opened, contents touched but not stolen. Her mother's pearls tangled with cheap jewelry, deliberate disrespect. Eleanor stood frozen. Her breath came shallow. "Call the police." Officers Mitchell and Torres arrived in 12 minutes. Mitchell was black. His eyes recognized what he was seeing. "Did you give permission for entry?" "Absolutely not," Eleanor said. Torres photographed everything. Mitchell took notes. Then Caldwell arrived, let himself in with his own key. "Officers, thank God. Emergency entry notice. Suspected gas leak. Posted 3 days ago." He showed papers, dated Wednesday. "There was no notice," Eleanor said. "Not my problem if you removed it. Pennsylvania law allows emergency entry for safety." Mitchell looked skeptical. "Where's the utility company report?" "Technician comes Monday." Torres took photos. "Dr. Washington, contact a housing attorney immediately." After they left, Caldwell smiled. "See? Even the police know you have no case." Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Jackhammering started. The sound exploded outside their bedroom wall. 3 men with machinery, right under their unit. "Emergency repairs," the sign said, "on Sunday." Dust poured in, gray, chalky, diesel-smelling. Eleanor's asthma hit immediately. Her chest tightened. She grabbed her inhaler. 2 puffs. The tightness remained. James helped her to the living room, but dust followed, seeping everywhere. She sat forward, fighting for each breath. 2 more puffs from the inhaler. The jackhammering continued for 9 hours, non-stop, only their wall. At 4 p.m., they left for fresh air, needed to breathe. Caldwell waited in the lobby, showing their apartment to a young white couple. "Premium location, recently becoming available." The woman looked uncomfortable. "But someone's living here." "Month-to-month situation, resolving soon." Eleanor and James walked past, out to their car. Caldwell followed in his Mercedes, parked next to their Honda, blocked them in, got out, started photographing their license plate, their car, taking his time. "Why are you following us?" "Just documenting vehicles at my property, making sure everything's legitimate." He stood there 20 minutes, making calls, texting, trapping them. Finally, he moved. Let them squeeze out. Eleanor's hands shook too much to write it down until later. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Police knocked. "Anonymous complaint. Suspected drug activity at this address." Eleanor stared. "Drug activity?" Officer Carter searched thoroughly, found only prescription medication, blood pressure pills, cholesterol medication. "I apologize. Obviously a false report." After he left, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table. 40 years of healing children. Never broke a law. And someone called the police to paint her as a criminal. Officer Mitchell called that afternoon. Personal call. "Dr. Washington, 3 false reports in 4 days. Someone's harassing you. You need legal help. Real help." Then the bank called. Her mortgage payment was lost in processing. She investigated. Discovered Caldwell owned shares in her credit union. Small shares. Enough for influence. Tuesday. Her credit card declined at the pharmacy. Eleanor's heart medication. Account frozen. Fraud investigation. 3 hours on the phone. Technical error. System glitch. So sorry. But Eleanor knew. That evening, Mrs. Carter knocked, brought soup. "We see what he's doing. It's not right." She handed Eleanor a USB drive. "My security camera. Shows him entering your apartment Saturday. No notice. I recorded everything." Mrs. Carter's eyes filled. "He did the same to the Rodriguez family. They couldn't take it. Just gave up. Don't give up. Please. If you leave, who's next?" Eleanor watched the footage later. Caldwell entered at 1:47 p.m., 43 minutes inside, photographing everything. She saved it, added it to her file. Tuesday night. Eleanor sat organizing documents, building her case. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, from something deeper. James came out, saw her face, tears, silent, running down her cheeks. He'd seen her handle trauma, difficult surgeries, losing patients. She never cried, until now. I operated on children for 40 years. Her voice broke. Saved lives. And now I can't feel safe in my own home. I feel powerless, James. Completely powerless. He took her hands. We're calling Thomas tonight. Enough. He'll be furious we didn't call sooner. That's his problem. This has gone too far. Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Caldwell arrived with a sheriff's deputy. Emergency eviction order, claimed judge approval, demanded immediate property assessment. Eleanor stood calm. I'd like to see the judge's signature. Caldwell fumbled with papers. The deputy examined them. Sir, this isn't properly executed. No signature, no seal. This is just a template. Caldwell's face flushed. These people are playing games. They're not even the right type for this neighborhood. Sir. The deputy's voice turned cold. Clarify that statement. Eleanor's phone was recording in her pocket. One-party consent state. Caldwell's control slipped. I have connections. Judges, politicians, people who matter. You think anyone cares about a couple of... He stopped, but everyone heard the unspoken word. The deputy turned to Eleanor. Ma'am, are you feeling threatened? Yes, we've documented 17 incidents in 13 days. She handed him her notebook. Timestamps, photos, videos, witness statements, Mrs. Carter's footage, everything. The deputy's expression darkened. Mr. Caldwell, leave immediately. Ma'am, file formal complaints today. Housing court and police. This is systematic harassment. After they left, Eleanor made the call. Thomas, sweetheart, we need your help. Mom, what's wrong? Someone's trying to force us from our home. He's crossed every line. Silence. Then his voice changed. His courtroom voice. Tell me everything. I'm coming tomorrow. Tomorrow? 9 a.m. Housing court. Whoever's doing this, he's done. Eleanor hung up, looked at James. He's coming. Outside, Caldwell sat in his Mercedes, on the phone with his attorney, confident. He had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning, Philadelphia Housing Court, 8:45 a.m. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and old paper. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Richard Caldwell arrived early, black suit, Rolex gleaming. His attorney, Gregory Hamilton, carried a leather briefcase stuffed with papers. 5 minutes tops, Caldwell said. Judge Brennan owes me. 20 grand donation to his campaign. Hamilton nodded. Standard eviction, problem tenants, open and shut. They took the plaintiff's table, spread documents everywhere, official-looking notices, violation reports. Everything is perfectly prepared. Caldwell texted his developer. In court now. Building vacant by December 1st. Response came immediately. 4.2 million transfers upon confirmation. He smiled. Put the phone away. 8:55. Eleanor and James Washington entered. One folder. Plain manila. Eleanor wore a simple navy dress and her mother's gold cross. James wore his church suit, 20 years old but maintained perfectly. They sat at the defendant's table, alone, no attorney. Caldwell leaned toward Hamilton. No lawyer. This is perfect. Hamilton smirked. Representing themselves, easy win. 9 a.m. The bailiff stood. All rise. The judge's chamber door stayed closed. Everyone waited. The clerk called. Caldwell versus Washington, housing dispute and eviction. Hamilton began. Your Honor, this is straightforward. Problem tenants refusing to... He stopped mid-sentence. The side door opened. The private judicial entrance. A man stepped through. 42 years old, African-American, tall, commanding presence, wearing full judicial robes, Pennsylvania Superior Court robes, black with gold trim. He walked to the bench, sat, arranged his papers. Good morning. I'm Judge Thomas Washington, presiding as special magistrate. Hamilton's briefcase hit the floor. Papers scattered. Caldwell stood frozen. Mouth open. No sound. Judge Thomas looked at his papers. Caldwell versus Washington. Mr. Caldwell, you're seeking eviction? Caldwell's voice cracked. Your Honor, Washington? There's no conflict disclosure. Because you didn't know there was a conflict. I'm fully aware. That's why I'm here. Complete transparency. Thomas looked at the defendant's table. Would the defendants please stand? Eleanor and James rose. Dr. Eleanor Washington. James Washington. Thomas looked directly at Caldwell. Let silence build. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The courtroom held its breath. For the record, his voice filled every corner. These are my parents. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Caldwell stumbled backward, grabbed the table. His face drained completely white. Sweat appeared instantly on his forehead, upper lip, visible across the room. Hamilton frantically flipped through files, hands shaking. Thomas leaned forward. Mr. Caldwell, explain why my parents should be evicted from their legal residence. Your Honor, I didn't... If I had known... Know what? That they had a son who's a judge? Would that have changed your behavior? Silence. Or would you have treated them with basic human dignity that all tenants deserve? No answer. Thomas pressed a button. A screen descended. Let's review the documentation. Eleanor's notebook appeared. Scanned pages, dates, times, details, video played. Caldwell's voice filled the courtroom. You people always have some sob story, don't you? The crumpled lease, the wiped hand, the scattered groceries, all on screen. Audio next, the developer's voice. Go back where you came from, Mrs. Carter's security footage. Caldwell entered the apartment illegally. 43 minutes inside. No emergency. No notice. 14 violations scrolled across the screen. Each time stamped. Witnessed. Recorded. Officer Mitchell's reports. 3 false police calls traced to Caldwell's phone. The courtroom is silent except for video playback. Each insult. Each threat. Each violation. Hamilton whispered urgently to Caldwell. Caldwell didn't respond, just stared at the screen, watching himself. The videos ended. Thomas turned everything off. Mr. Caldwell, explain these 14 violations of tenant rights. Caldwell barely audible. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? You harassed 2 retired professionals for 13 days, violated privacy, filed false police reports, engaged in racially motivated housing discrimination. Hamilton stood shakily. Your Honor, we request a continuance. Denied. We address this today. All of it. Thomas looked at Caldwell, the man who terrorized his parents, made his mother cry. Anything to say before I rule on your eviction petition? Caldwell's body hunched, defeated, desperate. His $4 million deal evaporated. His power is meaningless. Your Honor, I sincerely apologize. I never meant... Don't apologize to me. Thomas pointed. Apologize to them. Caldwell turned, faced Eleanor and James, couldn't look them in the eye. Dr. Washington, Mr. Washington, I deeply regret. Eleanor's voice cut through, quiet but steel. You don't regret your actions. You regret getting caught. James added, You searched our belongings, threatened my wife while she couldn't breathe. Caldwell started crying, real tears. Please, I have a family, a business. This will ruin me. Thomas picked up his gavel. You should have thought of that before you terrorized mine. The gavel struck, sound final, absolute. Your eviction petition is denied, permanently. Now we discuss the consequences of your actions. Caldwell collapsed into his chair. Hamilton gathered papers with trembling hands. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Thomas let it continue for 5 seconds. Then, silence. We're just getting started, Mr. Caldwell. Just getting started. Thomas Washington set down his gavel, looked at Caldwell directly. Stand up. Caldwell stood, legs shaking. Hamilton tried to steady him. Mr. Caldwell, do you understand the severity of what you've done? Yes, Your Honor. I'm deeply sorry. If I could take it back. But you can't. Thomas's voice remained calm, cold. You can't unterrorize my parents. Can't unviolate their home. Can't erase 13 days of systematic harassment. Eleanor sat quietly at the defendant's table, hands folded, watching justice unfold. Your Honor, please. Caldwell's voice broke. I made mistakes, bad judgment, but I never meant. You meant exactly what you did. Thomas pulled out a document. Pennsylvania Fair Housing Act, Section 5505, Discrimination based on race, Section 5507, Intimidation and coercion. You violated both, repeatedly, intentionally. Hamilton stepped forward. Your Honor, my client responds to legitimate business concerns. Counsel, stop talking before you implicate yourself further. Hamilton's mouth snapped shut. Thomas typed on his computer. The printer behind him whirred to life. I'm issuing immediate orders, effective now. The bailiff collected papers from the printer, handed copies to both tables. Temporary restraining order. Mr. Caldwell, you cannot contact Dr. or Mr. Washington directly. No calls, no visits, no messages. You cannot come within 500 feet of their residence. Caldwell swayed. But it's my building. Not anymore. Not for management purposes. Thomas continued. I'm ordering immediate transfer of building management to a neutral third party. Riverside Property Management will take over within 48 hours. You are stripped of all landlord authority pending full investigation. Your Honor, that's my business. My livelihood. You should have considered that before breaking the law. More papers printed. The Washington's lease is hereby restored with full legal protections. Rent frozen at current rate for 5 years. You will post a $50,000 bond to ensure compliance. Caldwell's face went gray. 50,000? Insurance. In case you violate this order, which I suspect you might try. Thomas looked at Eleanor and James. Your apartment is secure. He cannot touch you, cannot harass you, cannot retaliate in any way. Eleanor nodded. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not from sadness, from relief. Thomas turned back to Caldwell. All documentation from this case is sealed as evidence. I'm forwarding everything to the Attorney General's office for civil rights review. Civil rights? Caldwell's voice barely whispers. Yes. Federal jurisdiction. This isn't just a housing court anymore. Hamilton frantically scribbled notes. His hands shook so badly the pen kept slipping. Thomas wasn't finished. Pennsylvania Real Estate Commission will receive my report today. Your license is suspended immediately pending their investigation. You can't. I can. And I am. The bailiff handed Thomas another document. He signed it. You're also forbidden from initiating any eviction proceedings across your entire property portfolio, all 8 buildings. That's impossible. I have legitimate problem tenants. Do you? Or do you have more people you're discriminating against? The investigation will determine that. Thomas pulled up more files on his screen. I'm also ordering you to post public notice in all your properties. Currently under investigation for housing discrimination. Stays posted until investigation concludes. Caldwell made a choking sound. His developer deal was dead. His reputation was destroyed. His business crippled. Asset freeze on all property-related accounts. Ensures you can't hide money before victim compensation. Hamilton finally found his voice. Your Honor, this is excessive. Excessive? Your client terrorized elderly people, filed false police reports, violated constitutional rights. This is the minimum. The courtroom doors opened. 2 uniformed officers entered. Not bailiffs. Police. Mr. Caldwell, these officers will escort you to process paperwork for the restraining order. You'll surrender your building keys to the court-appointed manager. Caldwell looked at his attorney, at the officers, at Eleanor and James. This is a mistake. A huge mistake. When my lawyer files appeals, file whatever you want. Thomas's voice was ice. You'll lose, because everything I've ordered is backed by documented evidence of your systematic abuse. The officers approached. Sir, please come with us. As they led Caldwell away, he looked back at Eleanor one last time. She met his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. He'd tried to make her feel small, powerless, invisible. Now he knew the truth. She was none of those things, never had been. The courtroom doors closed behind him. Silence fell. Thomas looked at his parents, professional mask slipping slightly. Are you okay? Eleanor smiled. We are now. Outside the courthouse, news vans were already arriving. Someone had leaked the story. By afternoon, every Philadelphia station would be running it. Superior Court judges' parents targeted by Landlord, discrimination alleged. By evening, it would go national. And Richard Caldwell's nightmare was just beginning. 2 days after the hearing, Pennsylvania Attorney General Sarah Carter opened her investigation. Her office received Thomas's court documents Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, she'd assigned a team of 6 investigators. Housing discrimination, pattern and practice, federal civil rights violations. She spread the Washington case files across her conference table. This isn't one incident. I want everything on Richard Caldwell, every property, every tenant, every transaction for the past 5 years. The investigation moved fast. Within 1 week, they found Maria Rodriguez, the family Mrs. Carter had mentioned. They'd moved to New Jersey after Caldwell forced them out. Maria sat in the AG's office, crying as she told her story. He raised our rent by $300, only our unit. White family next door paid the same as always. When I complained, he said we could leave if we didn't like it. Her husband added, late-night inspections, constant violations we never committed. Our kids were scared to come home. The investigators found more. A South Asian family in Caldwell's Germantown property charged $200 more monthly than white tenants in identical units. A black elderly man in West Philadelphia denied maintenance requests for 8 months. Broken heating, leaking pipes, mold growing in the bathroom. Every case followed the same pattern. Minority tenants harassed, overcharged, pushed out. The forensic accountant found the proof, spreadsheets, rent records, payment histories, $340,000 in discriminatory overcharges over 3 years. 12 families were systematically targeted, all people of color. The Philadelphia Inquirer broke the story first. Front page, Sunday edition. Pattern of discrimination revealed in Philadelphia landlord case. By Monday, NPR picked it up. CNN by Tuesday. The story went national. The video went viral. 8 million views in 48 hours. Caldwell's voice. You people always have some sob story. Social media exploded. #justice for the Washingtons trended. #Caldwell racist trended. #housing discrimination trended. Comments poured in. Thousands, tens of thousands. This is why we need stronger tenant protections. How many landlords do this and never get caught? Thank God the Washingtons documented everything. The Pennsylvania Real Estate Commission held emergency hearings, reviewed 15 years of Caldwell's transactions. They found more violations, properties systematically undervalued in minority neighborhoods, lower appraisals, lower offers, keeping communities poor. Buildings in black neighborhoods received minimal maintenance. Buildings in white neighborhoods got immediate repairs. The commission voted unanimously. Lifetime license revocation, pending criminal trial outcome. Caldwell's developer deal died instantly. The investors released a statement. We do not conduct business with individuals engaged in discriminatory practices. The offer is permanently withdrawn. $4.2 million. Gone. His other properties lost value overnight. No one wanted to buy buildings associated with a discrimination scandal. 2 months later. Federal Courthouse. United States versus Richard Caldwell. The charges were severe. Federal civil rights violations under Title 18 U.S.C. Section 245. State housing discrimination under Pennsylvania Fair Housing Act. Criminal harassment. 14 counts. Filing false police reports. 3 counts. Breaking and entering. 1 count. Witness intimidation. 2 counts. Judge Marianne O'Connor presiding. 23 years on the bench. No tolerance for civil rights violations. The courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows. Community activists. Former tenants. Eleanor and James sat in the front gallery. U.S. Attorney Sarah Carter led the prosecution. Her opening statement was devastating. Richard Caldwell weaponized his position as landlord. He targeted families based on race, systematically, intentionally, for profit. The evidence will show a man who viewed people of color not as human beings, but as obstacles to his wealth. Defense attorney Hamilton argued business decisions, no racial intent, misunderstandings. The jury looked skeptical from day one. Week 1. Prosecution called witnesses. Maria Rodriguez testified first. He told me my cooking smells bothered other tenants, but the white family above us cooked bacon every morning. He never complained about them. She showed rent receipts. Her family paid $1,900 monthly. White neighbors paid $1,600. Same square footage, same amenities. The South Asian family testified. Same story. Higher rent, selective enforcement, constant harassment. Officer Mitchell took the stand. In 20 years of police work, I've never seen harassment this systematic. He weaponized the police department against innocent people. Mrs. Carter testified about her security footage, about Caldwell threatening her lease if she talked to the Washingtons. The forensic accountant presented spreadsheets, color-coded. Minority tenants highlighted in red, white tenants in blue. The pattern was undeniable. Red tenants paid more, received less service, faced more violations. Week 2. Eleanor Washington took the stand. The courtroom went silent. She wore the same navy dress from the housing court, same gold cross. Sarah Carter approached gently. Dr. Washington, please tell the jury what happened. Eleanor spoke calmly, precisely, clinical detail. Every incident is documented. November 8th, 6:47 p.m. He threw our lease papers at my feet, said we were dragging down property value by breathing in his building. She described the illegal entry. My medical files were photographed, private patient records, research documents. He violated not just my privacy, but the privacy of children I'd treated. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver, but several jurors wiped their eyes. I spent 40 years healing children, saving lives, making a difference, and Richard Caldwell tried to break my spirit simply because of my skin color. She produced her notebook. I documented everything because I knew no one would believe us otherwise. 2 elderly black people against a wealthy white landlord. Who would listen? Chen held up the notebook. But you had evidence. Yes, evidence. Witnesses, video, audio, everything. Because documentation is the only defense against power. The cross-examination was brief. Hamilton couldn't shake her testimony. Every question she answered with documented proof. Week 3. Caldwell took the stand, against his attorney's advice. Sarah Carter approached with the video cued. Mr. Caldwell, is this you? The video played. You people always have some sob story. Yes, but I didn't mean it racially. What did you mean? I just meant tenants who, people who... Finish that sentence, Mr. Caldwell. He couldn't. The jury watched him struggle, watched him fail. Chen continued. You charge the Rodriguez family $300 more than white tenants? Market rate adjustments, only for minority families? Silence. You entered the Washington's apartment illegally? Emergency inspection. Where was the emergency? Gas leak? The gas company found no leak. Your own records show no leak. You lied, didn't you? I made a mistake. You made dozens of mistakes, all targeting people of color. Coincidence? Caldwell's credibility shredded on the stand. Every answer is contradicted by evidence. Jury deliberation. 4 hours. The verdict. Guilty. Federal civil rights violations. All counts. Guilty. State housing discrimination. All counts. Guilty. Criminal harassment. 11 of 14 counts. Guilty. False police reports. All 3 counts. Guilty. Breaking and entering. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge O'Connor allowed it briefly, then gavelled for silence. 1 month later, sentencing. Judge O'Connor's voice filled the courtroom. Mr. Caldwell, you weaponized housing as a tool for bigotry. You exploited your power to oppress vulnerable people. This court will not tolerate such violations. The sentence: 3 years federal prison, 2 years state prison, concurrent. 5 years probation after release. $500,000 fine to Pennsylvania Fair Housing Fund. $750,000 restitution to victims. Lifetime ban from real estate industry in Pennsylvania. 1,000 hours of community service in fair housing organizations. Caldwell collapsed in his chair. Hamilton caught him. The courtroom remained silent. Justice delivered. Heavy. Final. Civil suits followed. The Washingtons settled for $2.4 million. Other families collectively received $5.1 million. Caldwell declared bankruptcy within weeks. Lost his home, his cars, his country club membership, everything. 1 week after sentencing, Eleanor and James held a press conference. Courthouse steps, cameras everywhere. Eleanor spoke. We didn't ask for this battle, but we fought it so others wouldn't have to face what we faced. Justice delayed is justice denied. Today, justice was served, James added. Document everything. Tell everyone. Never suffer in silence. The law works when we force it to. Thomas stood beside them, proud. His parents had changed the system. The Pennsylvania legislature was already drafting new laws. The Washington Act, strengthened tenant protections, streamlined harassment reporting, mandatory anti-discrimination training for landlords, real change, because 2 elderly people refused to be invisible. 6 months later. May sunshine warmed the balcony where Eleanor watered her geraniums. The same geraniums, the same apartment. But everything felt different now. Safe. Finally, safe. Below, children played in the newly planted community garden. Eleanor had suggested it. The new ownership was approved immediately. Riverside Community Cooperative owned the building now. Minority-owned. Tenant-focused. Every resident had voting rights. Mrs. Carter was elected building representative. Community meeting tonight, Mrs. Carter called up. Summer festival planning? I'll be there, Eleanor replied. This was home now, truly home. Inside, James prepared for his evening class. Community college engineering program. 16 students enrolled. First-generation college kids who thought engineering wasn't for them. Teaching them what you taught me, James told Eleanor. Precision, perseverance, pride in their work. Eleanor returned to volunteering. Free medical clinics in underserved neighborhoods. The work she'd always loved. But now she did something new. She spoke at fair housing conferences, tenant rights seminars. Document everything, she told the audience. Every incident, every witness, every detail. Documentation is your shield when power tries to crush you. People listened, took notes. Many cried. Many shared their own stories of harassment and discrimination. The Washington Act passed in March. Governor signed it into law. Thomas stood beside his parents at the ceremony. Strengthened tenant protections. Streamlined harassment reporting. Mandatory anti-discrimination training for landlords. Steeper penalties for violations. This is because of you, Thomas told them. Because you refused to be silent. Richard Caldwell was serving his sentence. Federal Correctional Facility, 18 months completed, 18 more to go. His family left him. Wife divorced. Children changed their last names. Didn't visit. He'd lost everything. Business, reputation, family, freedom. The lifetime real estate ban remained permanent. He'd never control housing again. Eleanor thought about him sometimes, wondered if he understood, if prison taught him what privilege had hidden. She didn't know. Probably never would. But she'd done her part. That had to be enough. One evening, a documentary crew interviewed them. National production about housing discrimination. Eleanor sat in her living room, family photos behind her, camera rolling. Why didn't you just take the money and leave? Eleanor smiled gently. We had every right to be there. We earned our place through decades of service. My husband built bridges. I saved children's lives. She leaned forward, voice stronger now. We didn't stay stubborn. We stayed because the moment you let injustice win, you give permission for it to happen to someone else. Someone with less privilege, less ability to fight back, James added. Caldwell saw skin color and assumed powerlessness. He gambled that we'd be too tired or too scared to resist. He was wrong. Eleanor continued. But here's what haunts me. We could fight because our son is a judge. We had resources. What about families who don't? Maria Rodriguez left rather than fight. How many others never got justice? Her voice intensified. Justice shouldn't require a judge in the family. It should be automatic, universal, guaranteed. That's why we shared our story. The documentary aired 3 months later, won awards, sparked national conversation. But for Eleanor and James, life continued simply. Morning coffee, watering plants, greeting neighbors, church on Sundays, the ordinary, beautiful life they'd fought to keep. 1 year after the courtroom victory, Eleanor stood on her balcony. Evening settling over Philadelphia. She thought about everything. The harassment, the fear, the victory. And the families are still facing discrimination, still suffering in silence, still afraid. She whispered to the evening air, Your story matters. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Below, Mrs. Carter called up, Dr. Washington, dinner's ready? I made extra. Eleanor smiled. Coming! This was worth fighting for. Community, safety, dignity, home, and she'd fight for it again, every single time. The Washington story isn't unique. It's just unusually visible. Thousands face housing discrimination daily. Most never see justice. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone facing their own battles. Someone documenting their own harassment. Someone wondering if fighting back is worth it. It is. Always. Comment below with your experiences. You're not alone. Follow for more stories where justice prevails over injustice. Support fair housing organizations in your community. Remember, silence protects oppressors. Your voice matters. Your share matters. Your story matters. One final question. If the Washingtons hadn't had a judge for a son, would Richard Caldwell be in prison today? Or would he still be forcing families from their homes? Let that question sit with you. Then ask yourself, what are you willing to do to make sure justice doesn't require privilege? Subscribe, share, speak up. Justice isn't a spectator sport.